Kemi thought her parents were destroying her life. Every morning began with Bible study before sunrise. To her, it felt like a prison. So when a friend finally offered her a taste of freedom, she took it. Kemi lived with her parents on a quiet street in Lagos. Every morning before school, the family gathered for devotion. While most teenagers were still asleep, Pastor Adeyemi was already reading from his Bible. His wife sat beside him, and across from them sat Kemi, half awake, trying her best to stay focused. That morning, her father read from Proverbs, "Do not follow the path of the wicked." Then he looked directly at her. "Kemi, what does that mean?" "It means I shouldn't follow bad company, Daddy." "Good." The answer was correct, but her heart was somewhere else. While her parents spoke about wisdom, discipline, and godly living, Kemi found herself thinking about everything she wasn't allowed to do. The parties, the phones, the freedom, the life everyone else seemed to be enjoying. She loved her parents, but she was beginning to feel trapped, and that feeling was growing stronger every day. Every morning, Kemi walked 20 minutes to school, and every morning she saw reminders of the life she wished she had. Teenagers laughing over their phones, friends recording videos, classmates talking about trends she knew nothing about. Kemi had never owned a smartphone. She wasn't on social media. She couldn't relate to most conversations around her. Sometimes she felt invisible, like she was living in a different world from everyone else her age. She wasn't trying to rebel, not yet. She simply wanted to belong. But that desire was about to make her vulnerable. At school, Kemi had two close friends, Sandra and Tola. Sandra was careful, thoughtful, the kind of friend who wanted the best for everyone. Tola was different, confident, fearless, the type of person who always knew something nobody else knew. One afternoon during break, Kemi finally exploded. She told them everything. How strict her parents were, how they refused to let her attend parties, how she felt left behind, how she was tired of always being the good girl. Sandra listened quietly, but Tola smiled because she had been waiting for this moment. "You need to relax," Tola said. Then she told Kemi about a small gathering happening after school on Friday. Just music, food, young people having fun. Nothing serious. Sandra immediately looked uncomfortable. Kemi knew her parents would never approve. She knew she should say no, but for the first time, she didn't want to. "What time?" she asked. Tola smiled. And just like that, everything began. Friday came faster than Kemi expected. That afternoon, she told her mother she had extra lessons. The lie slipped out so easily that it shocked her. For a moment, she almost took it back. Almost. But she didn't. And that was the first mistake. Not long after school ended, Kemi followed Tola to a compound a few streets away. Music filled the air, people were laughing, some were dancing, others were recording videos on their phones. Everything looked normal. In fact, it looked exactly like the life Kemi had always wanted. No strict rules, no constant supervision, no lectures, just freedom. For the first time in a long time, she felt excited. Maybe her parents had exaggerated things. Maybe they worried too much. Maybe she had been missing out for no reason. Then a boy offered her a drink. She hesitated, but everyone else was drinking, so she accepted. A few minutes later, Tola approached her with a small candy wrapped in bright paper. "Try it," she said casually. Kemi frowned. "What is it?" "A sweet," Tola laughed. "You act like everything is dangerous." Something inside Kemi felt uneasy. A small warning, a quiet voice telling her not to do it. But then she looked around. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone seemed fine. And she was tired of being the cautious girl, tired of always saying no. Tola unwrapped hers and ate it first. "See," she said, "nothing happened." Then she looked directly at Kemi. "You said you wanted freedom." Those words landed harder than they should have. "You said you wanted freedom." Kemi stared at the candy. Then, slowly, she put it into her mouth. And the moment she did, she had no idea she had just stepped onto a path she would soon regret. That night, everything seemed normal. Kemi ate dinner, spoke with her parents, said her prayers, and went to bed. But sometime after midnight, she began to dream. At first, it was beautiful. She was flying high above Lagos. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath her. For the first time in her life, she felt completely free. No rules, no restrictions, no one telling her what to do. She laughed. The feeling was incredible. Then, suddenly, the city changed. The lights below began to disappear, one by one, street after street, building after building. Darkness swallowed everything. And from that darkness, something started moving. Shadows rising upward, coming toward her. Kemi's smile vanished. The air grew cold. Then she heard a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Kemi?" She froze. The voice spoke again. "You belong to me now." Fear exploded through her body. She tried to move, tried to fly away, but she couldn't. Something was holding her. Then the shadows rushed toward her, and she screamed. Kemi jolted awake. Her heart was racing. Sweat covered her forehead. The room was dark, silent. The clock read 3:17 a.m. She reached for the light switch. The bulb flickered. And for a split second, she thought she saw a figure standing in the corner, watching her. Then the light steadied, and it was gone. Kemi sat frozen in bed, unable to explain what had just happened. For the first time in her life, she was genuinely afraid. The nightmares didn't stop. They got worse. Every night, Kemi dreamt. Every morning, she woke up exhausted. She stopped sleeping properly. She stopped eating properly. And slowly, her life started falling apart. At school, her grades dropped. Assignments went unfinished. Tests that once seemed easy suddenly felt impossible. One morning during a mathematics test, she stared at the questions for nearly 20 minutes. Her mind felt empty. Nothing made sense anymore. Even her teachers noticed. Mrs. Ibrahim pulled her aside after class. "Kemi, what's happening to you?" Kemi forced a smile. "Nothing, ma." But that wasn't true. Something was happening, something she couldn't understand, something she couldn't control. And every day it was getting worse. At home, her parents noticed the change too. She barely touched her food. She spent most of her time alone. And one evening, something happened that shocked everyone, including her. Her mother asked a simple question, and Kemi snapped. She raised her voice. The words came out before she could stop them. The room went silent. Her father stared at her. Her mother stared at her. Neither said anything, but the disappointment on their faces hit harder than any punishment. Kemi immediately regretted it. She apologized, then locked herself in her room, sitting alone in the dark, wondering what was happening to her and why she felt like she was becoming someone she didn't recognize. But the worst was still ahead. Weeks passed, and the dreams became more disturbing. Kemi was no longer seeing random shadows. Now there was someone or something.
For weeks, Kemi had tried to handle everything alone. She told herself the nightmares would stop.
She told herself things would get better. She told herself she was imagining things. But one Tuesday disappeared. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't carry it alone anymore. Trembling, she rushed back to her room and collapsed beside her bed. As Kemi knelt on the floor, her eyes landed on something she hadn't touched in weeks: her Bible. Dust covered the edges. The sight broke her heart. Slowly she picked it up, held it against her chest, and began to cry. Not the polite tears people cry in public, the kind that come from deep inside, the kind that leave you shaking. For the first time in a very long time, Kemi stopped pretending. She stopped trying to be strong, stopped trying to hide, stopped trying to fix everything herself. And she prayed. Softly. God, I'm sorry. Tears rolled down her face. I thought I knew better. I thought I wanted freedom. But look at me now. She wiped her eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to get out. Heartfelt. But if you're still listening, please help me. Silence filled the room. No thunder, no dramatic voice from heaven. Nothing spectacular. And yet, something changed. A small sense of peace settled over her heart. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. And that hope gave her courage to do something she had been avoiding. Tell the truth. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Kemi walked slowly to her parents' room. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding. She knocked. Her father opened the door. The moment he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. Minutes later, the family sat together in the living room. The same room where they hold devotion every morning. Nobody spoke at first. Then her father broke the silence. Gently. Kemi, whatever it is, we are your parents. We are not your enemies. Those words broke the final wall, and everything came pouring out. The lie, the party, the drink, the candy, the nightmares, the shadows, the fear, the figure that called her wife, the falling grades, the mirror, everything. For nearly an hour, Kemi told them the truth. When she finished, she lowered her head. Waiting. Waiting for anger, waiting for disappointment, waiting for punishment. But none of it came. Instead, her father pulled her into his arms and held her. Just held her. Like he did when she was a little girl. Kemi began to cry again. This time, harder than before. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder and quietly prayed. And for the first time in weeks, Kemi didn't feel alone. Emotional. Her father finally spoke. We're going to get through this. Kemi looked up. How? His answer came immediately. The same way we face every battle. We take it to God. The following morning, Pastor Obi arrived. He had spent years helping people through difficult situations, and when he heard Kemi's story, he wasn't afraid. The family gathered in the living room. Kemi sat in the center, her parents beside her. Pastor Obi stood before them, Bible in hand. The room was quiet. Then he asked a simple question. Kemi, do you believe Jesus Christ is Lord? Yes. Her voice was small, but certain. Pastor Obi nodded. Then this story is not over. And they began to pray. The prayers continued. And as they did, something inside Kemi began to break. Fear, shame, guilt, the weight she had been carrying, it all started falling away. Then suddenly, Kemi stood up, tears streaming from her face, and cried out, I renounce it. I renounce everything. In the name of Jesus, I renounce it all. Silence followed.
A deep silence, the kind that comes after a storm. Pastor Obi looked at her, then quietly said, "Peace, be still." And just like that, the heaviness was gone. Kemi took a deep breath, then another, and another. For the first time in weeks, her mind was clear, her heart was calm, and hope had returned. When Pastor Obi asked how she felt, her answer surprised even her. "I feel light." A week later, Kemi returned to school. Same road, same buses, same students, same city. But she wasn't the same person. Sandra noticed immediately. "You look different." Kemi smiled. "I am different." Later that day, she finally told Sandra everything. The party, the nightmares, the confession, the prayers, the healing. Sandra listened carefully, then hugged her. And for the first time in a long while, both girls smiled. Then someone else appeared. Tola. For a moment, nobody spoke. The memory of that party hung in the air. Finally, Kemi stepped forward and looked her directly in the eyes. "I know what was in that candy." Tola froze, immediately preparing a denial, but Kemi shook her head. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm not even here to blame you." Tola looked confused. Kemi continued, "Whatever happened to me, God brought me through it. And whatever you are dealing with, there is a way out for you too." 2 years passed, and on graduation day, Kemi stood at the top of her class. The same girl who had nearly lost herself. The same girl whose grades had once collapsed. The same girl who thought freedom meant doing whatever she wanted, now stood on a stage, receiving an award, with her parents watching proudly from the front row. "I feel light."